My son's teacher adopted a method whereby she's using a traffic light in order to let the children know whether they've been good, they are being warned, or they are plain naughty. That gave me an idea, and I thought, why can't I use the same at home? After all, that could be a good way of controlling, whether they are entitled to watch TV or play video games. So I bought myself a TrafficHat from Ryanteck so that I can install it at home on my trusty Raspberry Pi. Let's go and build it and see how to program it. First of all, though, let's have a look at Ryanteck's website to find a bit more information about the traffic light. So it should be on the Raspberry Pi hats, and there it is. That's our traffic hat. Clicking on the traffic hat picture, we get onto its page where we can order it and where it tells you a bit more about what the traffic hat is. And it is a very quick and simple way to grab programming with your Raspberry Pi. It can be programmed in Scratch, and it is, as it says, great for beginners. As we will see, some of the components have already been installed, the harder ones, and some are left for you to practice your soldering skills. And on the wiki, we can also find documentation on how to program the traffic hat. There isn't anything actually on how to build it, but it is so simple that clearly it won't need any real instructions. So let's move on, unpack it, and see how to install the various components. This is the bag you get. Let's open it up. And that's what's inside. So you have 3 huge LEDs, really nice, another quite big switch, and a buzzer. And as I said earlier on, some of the components have already been pre-installed. Some of the SMD ones, there is a little EEPROM, and then this header. On the PCB, which is as usual very good quality, quite sturdy, really nice designed, and on the silk screen you can get directly information on how to get to the guides to program the traffic hat. So let's go ahead and build it. I don't think it will really matter where we start with the green LED on either side, but I will do as it is on the on Ryanteck's website, and start with the green LED here, and then obviously the amber and the red. So let's do the LEDs first and then do the rest. As I did in my previous videos, I will use some blue tack to keep the LED firmly in place, and as I explained before, the LEDs will have a flat surface on one side, which is also pictured on the silk screen of the PCB. So follow that direction and put the LED's flat face on the flat part of the design of the silk screen. To help me out in the process, I've used a little piece of wood so that I can keep the PCB flat and leveled to solder the LEDs. I've regulated my soldering iron at 350 degrees, as that's just about right to put the LED onto the pads. And so put the iron on one side and start warming up the pad and the component leg, and then gently on the other side put just a bit of lead. Try not to put too much, otherwise it would just make a big blob. And keep the iron on until the fumes have gone. There. With the LEDs in place, we can go ahead and put the button. It doesn't have any particular orientation except that the short side needs to go like this. There isn't really a short side for the button, but it is where the legs are, but that's really self-explanatory. It just goes like that. So you push it gently in, and that stays in place on its own without any help from my trusty blue tack. So I'll go ahead and solder that together with the buzzer, which in fact has an orientation, and you're reminded of that from the sticker that is on the buzzer, which says plus on this side, and you have a plus onto the silk screen as well. So we'll follow the orientation here and try and place it. Need to adjust the legs a little bit, and gently goes. Okay, so this one probably won't stay in place on its own so nicely, so again the blue tack. I'll go ahead and do them. And with the side cutter I shortened the legs of the LEDs, not needing to go down flat on the PCB, just leave a bit sticking out. Same I did for the buzzer. Remove the blue tack, remove the label from the buzzer, and place the cover onto the button, which just clips on it like that. We're now ready to go and have some fun programming the TrafficHat. For the TrafficHat I will be using a Raspberry Pi B+, and be careful when you placing the hat onto the header here, as the connector is actually quite hard, so you will need to exercise quite a bit of pressure in order to fit it in. And I won't just do it in front of the camera because it really needs a bit of pressure and balancing, but it should slide in after a bit of effort. Problem comes when you remove it, as it really is quite hard to remove. It may be just a bad batch of these connectors here, but if that's the case for you, try and remove it gently from each side a bit at a time, so that it comes off without bending the pins and mostly without breaking the board of the Raspberry Pi. Otherwise you can use probably something like cobbler and use it directly onto our breadboard, which should be a bit more manageable. But the design has been made so that it fits nicely onto the Raspberry Pi, and in fact you can even use some hardware here to keep the TrafficHat leveled onto Raspberry Pi without it bending and touching on the underlying components. So that's how you fix it. Let's go ahead and program it. And just to be fair, once you fix it onto the PCB, it really stays quite nicely on it, and there is really no risk in any of the components underneath the TrafficHat to touch onto any of the parts of the Raspberry Pi, as the little E square prom will stop the PCB from moving further as it just touches onto the 3.5 millimeters jack for the audio. So great, good design. Great, we are now ready to get some code running on the TrafficHat. So I've gone ahead and went onto the wiki from Ryan, and I will go down at the GPIO 0 making a traffic light. Through this tutorial you will be given lots of information and instructions on how to build the program yourself, or if you're really in a rush you can just scroll at the bottom and go to the GPIO 0 complete page, where you get the listing for the program. Just for testing purposes, this is really very straight away. Just copy paste it into your PuTTY session or whichever session you're running. So I've got one here, and I went ahead and copied that onto a file that I called TrafficHat.py. So I will just go ahead and run the code. Okay, let's run the code now and see what happens. So the green LED comes up, and if we press the button, yellow, red, speaker comes on for a little while, then orange, blinking orange, and then green again. Fantastic. Building and testing the TrafficHat from Ryanteck was quite a bit of fun, and it's now clear that my children won't escape. So they now will have the traffic light to know exactly whether they can or cannot play video games and watch TV. From Ryanteck's website there are a lot more resources on the wikis so that you can get to program the TrafficHat with whichever language you can think of. It's really nice, a nice tool, and I would recommend that for any beginner and even for non-beginners. It costs very little, and I think you should get one and have some fun with it. So as usual, this concludes our video, and that's all folks. We'll see you next time.